Motivating your team as a leader can be tricky, but fortunately there's a simple framework steeped in 40 years plus of research that'll help you remember what you need to work on and give you some ideas on how to work on it. Hey leader, David Burkus here, organizational psychologist and author of 4 best-selling books on helping leaders and teams do their best work ever. And one of the core elements of helping those teams do their best work ever is understanding what motivates them. Motivation and inspiration are one of the core responsibilities of a leader at any level of an organization. Now, that doesn't mean that leaders have to be this charismatic, inspirational figure all of the time. In fact, more often, it's not actually about the leader at all, or their ability to give fancy halftime speeches, etc. at all. It's about understanding what drives individual members of the team and the team as a whole, understanding what levers need to be pulled to increase motivation, and understanding where motivation may be lacking. Fortunately, there is a model of what drives human motivation that has been around for almost half a century. Developed by the brilliant psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, self-determination theory argues that there are essentially 3 core drivers of motivation. And in the workplace, usually when there's a lack of motivation or a need to increase motivation, it's because one of these 3 drivers isn't being properly utilized. So in this episode, we're gonna break that 3-part model down. We're gonna talk about 3 separate ways to motivate your employees as a leader based on this research and offer some practical things you can do to take advantage of what this research suggests. Let's get started. So the first way to motivate your employees as a leader is through autonomy. Autonomy refers to how much control people feel like they have over their lives and over their work. People who feel a sense of autonomy in their work feel like, yes, they know what they're supposed to do, but they get to decide how they're gonna do it, when they're gonna do it, maybe where they're gonna do it, who they're gonna do it with, all of the who, what, where, when, whys, etc. They get a say in. When people feel like they're not in control, it's really easy for them to get demotivated because they don't feel free to express themselves in a way that plays to their strengths. They don't feel free to attack the problem the way they feel is most logical. They feel like they're just robots whose job it is to do the same repetitive tasks all of the time. But when people feel a sense of autonomy, they feel extra motivation to do the work. And why wouldn't they? They have a sense of ownership in not just what needs to get done, but how it's going to get done as well. For leaders, this means giving your team as much freedom, as much leeway as you can afford to give them. And you can probably afford to give them more than you think. But yes, every team, every organization, every individual job has certain responsibilities, policies, and procedures that need to be adhered to. But even in those situations, you might be able to give people a feeling of autonomy, even if you can't give them real autonomy. Here's what I mean. Say you work for an organization that has a set of standards about when you're supposed to be in the office and when you're not. Maybe it's a certain number of days per week, maybe it's a certain number of hours, but you may still be able to lead the team in a conversation about what days specifically we want to be there, or what hours we want to be together versus what times we want to be alone to focus in on individual work that needs quiet and focus. So you're still adhering to the policies and procedures the organization requires, but you're giving the team freedom to decide inside of those rules, freedom to decide how they want to go about attacking the problem. Every team is usually assigned certain objectives, but every team leader can bring the team into a conversation about which ones we want to attack first, what our priorities is, what our game plan is. You may not be able to give your team autonomy over what they're supposed to do, but you can almost always give them some say into when they're gonna do it, how they're gonna do it, and who they're gonna do it with. And smart leaders that motivate their employees know that that autonomy makes a huge difference in whether or not they feel ownership and whether or not they feel, I don't know how many more times I'm gonna say motivated in this video, but whether or not they feel motivated to do it. The second way to motivate your employees as a leader is through competence, or what's sometimes called mastery. Look, people feel motivated when they feel like they're growing. For the same reason that doing repetitive tasks all the time makes people bored and demotivated because of the lack of autonomy, it makes people feel demotivated because they feel like they're not growing, they're just asked to do the exact same thing. Believe it or not, with everything that we talk about right now with stress and mental health, etc., some element of the job needs stress. People are most motivated when they feel like the demands of the job are pushing them just to their limit, pushing them maybe just under their limit, but still stressing them. They want to feel what's often called eustress, that I have high demands asked of me, but I have the competence to meet those demands. And if I just stay there over time, my competence keeps growing and growing and growing, and eventually I get bored because I'm actually more competent than the demands of the job. So smart leaders, motivating leaders, know where their people are in terms of confidence and are giving them tasks that continue to push them to grow a little bit. They also fight for their people to have access to learning and development opportunities, leadership development opportunities, and a host of other things that make them feel like if I stay here and I stay a part of this team, I'm going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue to master my tasks and set myself up for whatever the next job in my career is. And that's going to keep them motivated and keep them doing their best work. And the third way to motivate your employees as a leader, the third element of self-determination theory, is relatedness. How well do people feel connected to other people when they're doing their work, and how well do people feel like their work serves and cares for other people? Humans are social creatures. We want to connect to other humans. Even, this isn't an extrovert-introvert thing. Even introverts want to connect with other humans. They may just want to connect with less humans less often. But nobody wants to be totally alone. And when we ask people to do jobs that demand that they just be in a vacuum, totally alone, devoid of any interaction and any bonding with anyone else, it's no surprise they get demotivated pretty fast. So great leaders understand this, and they're looking for ways to build bonds on their team on a regular basis. Sometimes this means doing things that don't look like work. Sometimes this means taking the time to create a ritual of a regular meal, like maybe one lunch a week or one dinner a month. Sometimes this looks like structured icebreakers at the beginning of weekly meetings that help people understand a little bit more about each other. But often what this looks like is not just connecting the team together, but connecting the people on the team to the direct beneficiaries of their work. And if you regularly follow my work, you get this immediately. One of the most powerful questions you can answer for your team is who is served by the work that we're doing. Not only because that motivates people to do the work, but it motivates people through this sense of relatedness, this sense of connectedness to other humans just by doing the work that we're asked to do. Teams that are bonded together do their best work, not just because they understand each other and they can collaborate better, but because relatedness is a huge driver in whether or not every individual on that team feels motivated to do their work as well. So keep answering that question on a regular basis. Who is served by the work that we do? And also, who are we doing this work with? And how can we feel more connected to them? Now, if you're thinking about these three drivers, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, you've probably already felt like maybe you're missing one, maybe in your own individual career, but certainly on your team, maybe that you're missing one or two of these. And that would be the place to start. If your team doesn't have enough autonomy, what are the ways you can lead a conversation into how we're going to attack the assignments that have been given to us that gives them that sense of autonomy? If your team doesn't feel all that connected, how are we going to build more bonds on a team? And how can I help myself feel like I'm constantly growing and progressing? How can I help the people on my team feel like they're constantly growing? Probably in a team that isn't at its optimal motivation, one or more of these are missing. And whichever one is the biggest gap, work to fill that now, because you're gonna get the highest return on investment of your time. But when you're doing that, don't ignore the other ones. High-performing teams and high-performing individuals are highly motivated teams and highly motivated individuals. And that means that in all three of these elements, they are firing on all three cylinders. They have all three levers pulled. That gives them the motivation they need to do their best work ever. Oh, and one more thing. Self-determination theory is at the core of what drives all individuals. But if you've especially got some high performers on your team, you may find you need a little bit higher level of motivation. So you're going to check out this video here on what high performers want. That one, right there.